Hey guys, it is John C. Morley here, serial entrepreneur. Welcome to another edition of Inspirations for Your Life cast, available as the podcast as well as the audio cast, which comes out 24 hours later. I really want to say thank you to all of you for popping in again. You know how we start. We start on a Saturday. We roll with a brand new master topic on Saturday. We roll all the way through the week, and we end up on a Friday on a day 7. We talk with people from around the world, authors, and we just have really amazing content to improve the quality of your life. So thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for coming. And if you're coming back and supporting, really appreciate you, friends, colleagues, and associates. Couldn't do it without you. And of course, I want to thank you on the replay. If you're watching us at 1 a.m., 1 p.m., 2 a.m., 2 p.m., 6 a.m., 6 p.m., 12 midnight, 12 noon, I don't care when you're watching. I just appreciate you come back and rewatch us and soak up all this great information, because knowledge is key to becoming successful. But sometimes these nuggets actually overwhelm us. You don't have to learn everything right now. You can watch these podcasts as many times as you want. We have over 550 some episodes, and we're growing. So I do want to thank you for that. Let's get into our master topic, shall we? And then I'll introduce our wonderful guest for today. So the master topic, if you guys haven't been with us, it is how to get engaged. Series 2. That means we're in year 2. Show number 11, and we're in episode number 3. So when we think about getting engaged, a lot of people think about marriage. I'm talking about you being engaged in life. Maybe you get stuck. Maybe you're inundated with stuff you have to do, and you just wonder, how are you ever going to get it done? Like if you go on a trip and it's like, I got a million things to do, and it's like somehow you get it done, but you don't realize how you get it done. But it's amazing how this can happen. So without any further ado, I definitely want to introduce our great guest here for today. And our guest is an author, actually, of an amazing book, which you guys definitely want to check out. It's called In His Footsteps. I gave my to-do list to God and got more done, more sleep, and less stress. Our guest tonight is Margaret Agard. Please help welcome to the Inspirations for Your Life talk show, Margaret Agard, to tell us a little about her story. Hey, Margaret, welcome. Great to have you with us today.
Hi, John. Happy to be here.
So you have an amazing book from that cover. Very, very interesting book. I just have to ask you, and then I'll ask some other questions. What got you motivated to write that book?
The same thing that I wrote the book about. I started taking my to-do list every day to God and saying, what do I need to do today? Which eventually became, what do you want me to do today? And one day it was, start writing your life online. This was back in 2000. I'm not sure WordPress even existed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started writing online after about a year or two. Was now take what you wrote and make it a book. And what I was writing was what happened when I got up every day and said, what do you want me to do today?
A lot of people, I guess, have challenges with the fact that, you write something down. So tell us a little bit about this, because it's pretty fascinating. How is it that you do that? Now, our show is not a religious show, but for those of you guys that watch it, I am Roman Catholic. And so regardless of whether it's about a religious person that you believe in or not, or it's just about the universe, the energy, tell us a little about how one should go about giving it up to God or giving up to the universe. So how do we actually do that, Margaret?
Well, in my case, I feel as if I've learned how to connect to the divine. Some people call it their intuition or their higher power, or as you said, the universe. And I have learned, starting from when I was in my early 20s, how to recognize when I was connecting to that part of myself that I would say isn't really me. And it's someone or something higher than I am. And I just started, I was actually in a place, John, where I was overwhelmed. I was a single mother. I was an executive in the high-tech industry. I had 8 children. A couple were in college. The rest were in high school or junior high. And I also had decided to finish my degree And when I first started in the high-tech industry, you just had to be smart. But then everybody was going public and you had to have some credentials. And so I had gone back to finish my last 2 semesters. So there I was, single mom, sole financial support, 8 children, executive in the high-tech industry, also going back to college full-time. And I was a tiny bit overwhelmed. So
I can imagine that. For those of you just tuning in, so Margaret Agard is an award-winning author of the In His Footsteps memoirs, a Christian mystic, Reiki healer. We have something in common there. I'm actually a Reiki level 2, and a former executive in the high-tech industry. And she's also a wife and the mother of 8 grown children. And she's sharing her simple, what we would say, but really it's not simple and not easy, a method for both kind of taming her to-do list and living a life on purpose and joy, and I guess doing what you were sent out to be here for. And I think it's great when we can live on purpose. And I have to ask you, as you were saying about this list, so where do we start if we want to, let's say, give the list up to God? Because we have lots of things this could affect. It could affect finances. It could affect relationships. It could affect our career goals. It could affect our egos, right? It could affect a lot of things. So where do you start with this process? Because it's not easy.
No, but I was in the habit of making a list of what I was going to do that day. And I knew how to prioritize. And what had happened is I kept prioritizing, only it turned out my priorities were wrong. Something would get changed. Someone would cancel a meeting. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I only knew the future. And so what I did was I started taking that list that I made up. I still kind of do them, not quite as much. I just like write it down on a 3x5 card. Here's what I'm planning to do. And then at night, I used to do it in the morning, but I didn't want my plans to change. Okay. So it works better if I do it at night. Here's what I'm planning to do tomorrow. And I take my list and I sit quietly, kind of meditation, and just wait for that thought, that confirmation. And I often cross things out and a thought comes and I write that down. The thought might be to make a call to someone. The thought might be a bigger project. I want you to start a podcast. The thought might be, you don't need to go to the grocery store tomorrow. You're going to need that time for something else. It's very different each day, but it's basically, I have been directed. So my life, I don't know how to say it, but your day is your life. Like whatever you're doing.
How do you know? How do you know, Margaret, when it's the divine talking to you, and it's not you saying, "Okay, you got to do this"? So what's the difference? How does somebody? Obviously, it's a skill you got to develop, but how do you know?
Right.
A lot of what we teach is we tell people, to meditate and work on alpha, and there's things, and they can get signs and inspirations and ask the universe things, but the universe doesn't come out and literally talk to us.
Well, in my head, a thought. Yep, it's a thought in my head. Right.
It's a thought. So it just comes to you out of nowhere, basically. It just comes out of the blue.
Well, I have learned to recognize which thought is the divine versus my ADHD speaking or my critical mother popping up in my head. I actually had to learn how to differentiate. And that also was something I asked for. A lot of people who are listening, they already know how to differentiate, John. So that's why I was moving ahead with this. But the first step would be simply to say, how do I learn to hear that voice? And whether it's through prayer or meditation, that your intention, I need to learn how to hear that voice. In my case, I just prayed and said, I don't know what I'm hearing that voice. Help me learn it. And for me, the thought will come. And a lot of times I blow it off and the thought will come a second time or a third time. And so that's how I know it's the divine. It's usually, it's a good thing. And it sometimes comes with a sense of peace, a sense of, I want to say confidence. Yep, this is what I'm supposed to do. But a lot of times if I blow it off, it will come back.
So basically you're getting that. I've seen it comes in dreams sometimes too. If you get something, it could come in a dream where you could get that thought, or, you could get something like I've seen this before where you get a 9/11 and people say, oh my gosh, that's a bad thing. But 9/11 is actually divine numbers. So when you get 9/11, it actually means that there could be the angels actually trying to make change for you and could be giving you some type of peace. I know I've always had great, I don't say luck, but great support with Michael, St. Michael, Raphael, and St. Gabriel, and also Pedro, and then also St. Expedite. And I find that people think if you just pray one time, it's not like you go to, I'm not a fast food person, but it's not like you go and place your order and like, okay, I put the order in.
Right.
Well, where is it? It doesn't quite work like that. It's like they almost want to see that you're committed, that this isn't like something, I just want to pull out the prayer book and, all right, I need this today. So I'm going to pull it out. But I do agree with you that even if you haven't gotten the answer, you do get a sense of peace out of praying. And I think that's probably the first step.
So in my case, I am actually asking a specific question that has to do with, what do you want me to do? Now it's tomorrow. What do you want me to do tomorrow, God? And a lot of times it's just keep working on the project I already gave you, But again, it can be in addition to that, I want you to call this neighbor. You need to check in with one of your children. I just different thoughts will come. And I will change my to-do list based on the thought I have, which is, I don't know how that would come to me in a dream. I think if you're praying for some big thing, like, I don't know what your big thing might be, how to make my podcast more successful, you might get different answers than my question, which is, what do you want me to do today or tomorrow? Then I do that thing. And then sometimes it's, make sure you leave plenty of free time because I'm going to send you something that fills it.
But it's also having that, what do they say? It's about asking, I always say believing and then receiving. So you have to ask. Believe is a big motto on our channel. You have to believe before you can achieve anything. And then you have to basically open your heart, your mind, your body up to receive. People ask, they believe, and then they're not ready to receive it. Like you have to be ready to catch the ball. You got to be ready to receive that message from spirit, like you've mentioned to me.
And in my case,
when you get, yes,
it was a step-by-step process. So if the first thought I had the first time I prayed was, what I want you to do is give up being an executive, write books, and go on podcasts, I'd have been like, huh? But that isn't how it happened. It was kind of a step-by-step thing that I can look back and say, that's how I got from there to here. And that's why I think it helped to do it on a day-to-day basis. So, but I'm talking to list makers. Some people aren't list makers. I happen to be one. And so if you're the kind of person who writes down your to-do list for the day, this is a good practice to get into.
I love that idea. Now I do it on Google Calendar, but I always say if it's not on the calendar, it's not happening, whether it's podcast interviews, in other words, if it's not on that calendar, it's not happening.
Right.
I mean, there's a chance, but it's got to be on that calendar because everything is first priority on that calendar. And I think some people may not like that, but I think when you do have that perspective, and also there's time on your calendar, which I call the free time or your evening time. That's when you're not doing stuff, but that's more of time that you're doing personal things. And of course, you've got to make priorities in that schedule too. But your 9 to 5, your 9 to 6, that kind of time, I call it the revenue generating time. You've got to basically make sure that you're using that time in the most valuable way. So what would you say when you asked divine or spirit or God for, your first thing? You said, hey, how do I know if this voice is you? How long did that take you? And what was that process like to know?
Yeah. I write this in the book, and it really took like a week because I asked the question, and the first day after I asked the question, I'll tell this story. It was just, I was making a pot of chili, and I was in my early 20s. I had kids, and the thought came, invite, the Smith family to dinner. And I thought, no, I just had the Smith family dinner Friday night. It's Monday. Why would I invite them to dinner Monday night? They'll think that's weird. And then the thought came a second time, invite the Smith family to dinner. And again, I thought, well, no, tonight we were going to spend some time with our kids doing a little Bible study and talking about tithing. And the thought came a third time, invite the Smith family to dinner and ask them to stay for your Bible study. And I thought, is this God? Is this what it feels like? Is this what it sounds like? So I did invite the Smith family to dinner. And at the end of dinner, we were doing this little lesson on tithing, and they shared with us, and I don't think they would have done this if we had not been having that lesson. they shared that they had decided to pay tithing, that they thought there were blessings in store and they had gotten behind. They wanted to catch up, which I don't recommend, by the way, but they did. And they had gotten a check on Friday that was enough to pay their tithing or to buy food, but not both. And so for some reason, they decided to pay their tithing. And Sunday afternoon, by the time I left church, they'd had invitations to dinner every night of the week except Monday. And so then I had this thought, invite them to dinner. And I thought, I guess that was God. And I guess that's how he sounds, or she, or the divine sounds to me in my heart and mind. And then I had a couple more experiences like that week. And after that, I put down, well, here's some of the ways I know that it's God talking to me. And one is I will have the thought more than once. It's a good thing to do. And sometimes it comes to me when I'm journaling. So I'll be sitting in my quiet meditating time and I'll be journaling and the thoughts will come as I'm writing. But eventually, I just got experienced enough at it that I can say, yeah, I think this is it. This is God. He's talking. I need to listen.
Why is it that most people don't ever make this realization? Because there are a lot of people that don't make this connection. Why do you think that is?
They don't ask. You
They don't
mentioned
ask.
intention, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't ask and they'll never receive it. They don't ask.
That's right.
But you can't just ask and expect like somebody to give you an instant answer. There might be a delayed response.
It took time. It took time to learn. Yeah. And I had actually said that. Like,
and I find that it's definitely got potential. But I mean, what would you say the hardest lesson was that you learned from this?
The hardest lesson is setting aside my own plans and changing them. You know what? I don't want to be micromanaged. There were issues. Often I thought, I don't know what this thought is. I'm sure it's God, but I think he's wrong. And then it would turn out, no, that was right. And you know, one of the stories is we had an internet business. We did shippings on Monday, always did. For over the weekend, we had orders from Friday afternoon, Saturday, and Sunday. So we had half our orders Monday morning. It was always at the top of my list. Do the orders. Never got changed. One Monday I'm there and the thought came, don't do the orders today. And I thought, you know what? I don't know how things work in heaven. Let me tell you, here on earth, if we say we're going to ship next business day, we're going to ship next business day. So I got all orders ready, went to the post office. Turned out it was President's Day. The post office was closed. I could have waited.
So that was a very viable, yeah. But I think the whole premonition for some people that, you know, trying to get an answer for something and, you know, being able, you might have heard of Force versus Power, which is a very good book too. And, you know, the whole thing of, you know, you could take your finger and you could just go like this and you could kind of develop it that you could actually get a yes or no answer, which is very great, but it can't give you more than a yes or no. Right. If you want, you know, details, well, this doesn't work for that. It works for a lot of things and it works really well. It's just that you have to relax and you have to trust. And I think when people are going through hard times, this can be hard. What advice do you have, Margaret, for people that might be going through hard times right now? And they're like, I don't have time to do this. Like, I can barely put food on the table for my family. Like, what advice would you give those people, Margaret?
Well, there's the time to do it. When I started doing it, it was because I had too much to do, not because I had not enough to do. And I couldn't handle it all. That's why I turned and started asking, first initially was asking, what do I need to do? And, you know, I had 8 kids. I was the sole financial support. I was concerned about putting food on the table. And that's when my answers came. And I realized, you know, the divine doesn't want us to struggle more than we have to. And by paying attention to that, my life just flipped. I was only getting about 4 hours sleep a night, but then I started being finished every day about 8. I got things out of my life I didn't need in my life. And I was able to get extra income in that I hadn't expected. I actually, after I finished school, got the best job I'd ever had with lots of free time. I mean, how many executives you have free time? But I actually did with that job. So it was good.
So it's something you can use not only in your personal life, but it's something you can use in business life too.
I once had a radio show and I had some guests on. We were talking about this. And one lady said, "Oh, when they just start firing half the people and now you're doing twice as much work, but getting paid the same." And she said, "I asked that question every hour for the first couple of months. Like, now what do I do now?" Just trying to handle it all. And it feels weak. And that's why I stopped for a while, because I thought, okay, it's all under control now. I'm not going to bother you with this anymore. And of course, it all got out of control again. And that's when I realized maybe I should change that question from what do I need to do to what do you want me to do? And that's when my life really changed.
I love that phraseology about what do you need me to do. That's a very interesting thing because they always say in life, we are always getting his support if we're doing God's will or we're doing the universe's will. And
Right.
so I think even though we want to do lots of great things, I was always taught that, things will come in different packages. We just have to be open to how they'll come to us. And you may not get what you're asking for. You might get it later. You might not get it now, but you might get something better than what you're asking for.
Yes.
Uh,
That's exactly what happened. I had a 20-year plan, and I can tell you getting married again, writing books, and being on podcasts was not on that 20-year plan. It was stay in the company I'm with, move up to the executive level, really fatten up my 401k, retire like that. That was in my 20-year plan. That's not what happened. And I love what happened. I love this life a whole lot better.
and you probably wouldn't change one stitch of that.
No.
No. Probably the only thing you probably wished is that you found it sooner, but you probably found it just at the right
Exactly.
time, right?
Well, that's it. And I was thinking about that the other day. Everything I did in the past, I have used. So everything I've done, I've used. Sometimes it doesn't look, I think, as if we're heading in the direction where we think we're going to be happy. But all
Mhm.
the experiences, all the information I gained, all the skill sets I gained from those different jobs, I use today.
I think what a lot of our listeners and viewers like to hear, and I think this is why a lot of people like our show and probably like what you do as well, is that, we're kind of rolling our sleeves up and we're getting down in the trenches. And a lot of people are like, well, I'm up here. And I always like tell people, it's like, we're all kind of here together. We're all just trying to work together. But everyone giving advice that's way up here, I think when people know you've gone through that hard time and you can, I like to say, break bread with them, it has a different quality. I was visiting my alumni college this week, and I was invited up for a dinner because I served a student government and taking a tour around campus for 2 days, which is a 15 hours of walking, which was a lot.
Ooh.
Telling these people 7 hours on the academic side and getting a personal tour from some of the doctors, and then a 7-hour tour on the residential side. And just going to people and just mentioning the word, oh, I'm nobody, I'm just an alumni. And as soon as I mentioned, versus I say, I'm nobody, I'm just an alumni, I was like, you're an alumni? I'm like, yeah, I went here. Like 1990, like, you did? And I guess I wasn't expecting that much of a reaction. I mean, anywhere. If I was talking to professors or I was talking to students that were freshmen, I was having conversations with people that I didn't know. I mean,
Yes.
I literally walked around talking to people, and it was like I had so much fun talking to people that I didn't know. And it was like, when are you coming back? I'm like, I don't know. And it's like a 2 hour and 45-minute drive for me. But I
Yeah.
think, when we live our life on purpose, and I think that's something that a lot of people want to do, but for whatever reason, they don't do it. And I think that's because, like you said, they get too wrapped up in life.
And they don't know
They
what
just
their
don't
they
really
don't know
find it.
what their purpose is, and they think it's going to be a big purpose, like I'm going to be Mother Teresa and go to India. What's my purpose? But sometimes the purpose is just be where you are and be really kind to your neighbors. And my mother just died, and it took her forever. Like she was 96, and
Oh, I'm sorry to hear
she
that.
kept like, "Can I go now? Can I go now?" Oh no, we were just kind of happy just to see her finally get to go.
I had a
And
grandmother, the same thing where they were like saying, "Is it okay? Is it okay?" It's like, "Can I close my eyes now? Can I close my eyes now?" And it's like they were staying awake for us.
Right.
And so once we said, yeah, you can close your eyes, then she had left. And, you don't realize what's going on, but to have a purpose in life, I feel one of the biggest things in life is to have a purpose that people understand for the entire while you're here and while you're not here, because I think if you can make somebody improve their life, or you
Right.
can have somebody, you know, get a glimpse or some hope, I think that's priceless.
So what I
Um,
was going to say about my mother is one of her my niece said her she had helpers who came over to help her, and she
mhm.
paid for like CNAs and care, and she got a new one the last couple 3 months of her life, and she was that woman who was going through a very hard time, and she just said, um, my mother had a big influence on her, helped her get through some grief she was going through. And so we could say my mother's purpose was to be old and sick and be taken care of by this woman. We don't, our purpose is not just make $1 million. There's more to life.
I always say to people that, yes, I understand you may want the money, and the money will come when you find your purpose or when you're passionate. I tell people I don't work a day in my life.
Mm.
And that's because I love what I do, just like you love what you do. And I think when you love what you do, it creates this passion, it creates this dynamic that is multifaceted, but yet it almost attracts like a positive and a negative force. And I believe that karma and also how we connect with people and how we treat people is also vital to how we live our purpose.
Yes. John, all I can say to that is amen. I agree with that. Yes. And as I said, I have found multiple purposes. So one purpose is simply often I feel like I need to check in with someone, need to stop by their house. And often they say, I just needed someone to talk to. Thank you for being here. And at the same time, my purpose included writing these books and sharing this message on podcasts, that the way to give your life to the divine is to give your day to the divine. And the way to do that is, for me, is to give my to-do list.
And that could be anything that people want. They could just make that thought that they're basically going to give it up to, and we've seen that many places in the Bible where they've talked about the fact that give it up, put all your worries to God. Just give him all your worries, give him all your troubles, and just let him handle everything for you. Let him fight your battles for you.
Now, can I share this? I tell a couple of stories in the book, and one is called Manure.
Sure.
And so my husband had this 2,000 square foot greenhouse because like the house was like 200 square feet, but he loves to garden and he needed a bunch of manure, and it was spring. And at some point in time, it's past the time you can put manure on the garden. But every day he went to go get some manure from, I don't know, some nearby horse farm, and someone would need help. And he would stop what he was doing and go help that person. We lived out in the country where there were a lot of low income people. He helped people fix their wells. He helped people fix their old beater cars so they could get to work. He was constantly dropping what he was doing to help. And he wanted that manure. And it was getting past the time. And we got a call. We lived up near Yosemite, from the Yosemite, I'm going to call them manure haulers, because they have mules, pack animals, mules and horses, and a ton of stuff. They would never bring it to us before. He'd been asking for like 6 or 7 years. They never brought us any. But during that 2-week period, they called the house and said, we have a load. We don't have any place to dump it. Do you want it? And I was like, yes, because he wasn't home. And when they showed up, let me tell you, John, this load of manure was like a tractor trailer. They dumped it in our front yard, which fortunately we're in the country. It's not like we had a ton of neighbors. And it was a mountain of manure, a mountain. And when my husband got home, he was so happy. And I thought, there's not a lot of men who would be happy to come home to a mountain of manure in their front yard. But God knows what we need. And that's how I feel about it. If I do what he wants me to do, then either through what I'm doing, I find out what I need, or he just hands it to me. He dumps them out in the manure in my front yard.
Just had to pause and think about that in a second. I was just literally just took back a second about that, and we're really kind of being, God's instruments, and we're kind
Yes.
of, we're doing His work on earth, and I guess the closer we get to actually doing God's work, the more that He'll put people and resources in our place to help us, do His work. His work is our own joy, but sometimes, like you said, there could be something that He wants us to focus more on.
Yes. Yeah.
And just
I agree.
knowing that you can just, like you said, ask. And would you say, how long does it take right now when you actually ask for something? Would you say it takes a while to get an answer, or is it a lot quicker now?
Well, John, when I ask about what do you want me to do tomorrow, that
Hmm.
answer is there. When I ask, how do I do, how do I find the best person to cover for my book, that could take a while. Or if my husband was going through some terrible financial health problems a year ago, and we actually thought we were going to lose him, and it was like being married to Benjamin Button. He was going backwards. He kept
Hmm.
losing capabilities, and then we had sort of this miraculous turnaround. And people would say, well, it wasn't a miracle. You found a good neurologist and he did surgery on his neck. Well, it was because the way it happened was like, wow. We'd seen one neurologist through the VA. He goes to the VA and he said, well, it's because he has this disease and it's not going to do us any good to look any further. But the VA actually agreed to pay for him to go to the Mayo Clinic, which was like Miracle 1. And Miracle 2, the Mayo Clinic accepted him, which is also something. And 3, he was in there for a cardiac problem, but they sent them to their neurologist, who said, well, it could be your disease, or it could be something wrong with your neck. So we're going to look at it. And that's when they found out he had this fracture in his neck that he'd had for a couple of years, that's why it was going downhill. And so they did surgery and it was like total turnaround. For us, that was a miracle. We thought he was on his way out. He's in his 80s, and yet that was like miracle, 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 miracle. And now he's back to where he was a few years ago.
I think people today are more expectant of miracles than they were several years ago. Maybe
Is
because of
that
the
good?
time we're in. I've been noticing that people are more in need of them. Not that they didn't need them many, many years ago, but I just felt like with everything that's happened from 9/11 and then the COVID, I just feel like people are more in need of miracles right now, at least in the last 5 to 10 years. When I was in college, miracles were not something that was really expected. And I think if people expect miracles, they're more apt to get miracles if you expect them.
Yes. Or
So
maybe
you're
recognize
supposed to.
them. I don't
I'm
know.
sorry,
I'm not, and to recognize them. So if
to recognize them.
yes, because a lot of people would say, well, you just went to the right neurologist, but how we got there, I don't see it as coincidence,
I
but
have
there
a
are
thing I
people
say
who
that there
would,
are there are no coincidences in life.
right?
I was trying to get a radio show for a very long time, and I called. Something told me to call them, and I called them, and they said that this guy is retiring. And why were you interested? I said, I'm interested in the show. Well, we'd have to go through the procedure and it would take a few weeks. And I said, okay. And he's looking to retire. And next thing I know, I have a regional radio show and with
Wow.
6,000 people. And I was
Wow.
like, and that's every Tuesday morning at 10:05 a.m. WTBQ. And so that was something that was just very like out there.
So
The next thing
how
I
do you
put out there
define
is
how do you
what's that?
define that thought? And then I had the thought, make this call. How do you define
How'd
that
I
thought?
find that thought?
Yeah, how do you define? How do you? Cause to me, I would be looking back saying, "Ah, that's how the divine speaks to me. That's how my higher power, God, speaks to me."
Well, I was doing something for the community. I was working on an event and doing some advertising with a station. And I don't know, something while I was at the station, I said, huh, let me see if they're looking for a motivational show. Can't hurt, right? So I
Right.
said, let me mention it to them. I mentioned it to them and they said, well, do you have any references? Do you have a site? I said, yeah. I said, I have a whole portfolio. I gave them the site. Within less than a day, I got an email back saying, yeah, we're interested in bringing you on. Are you still interested? And I said, yes. And I've been on the air now for about, well, I started about the 21st of February. So, or the week before the 21st. So we're right around almost a month right now that we're on the air.
So this is
And it was just
new.
very interesting how that happened.
Well,
I
John, I
can't,
just say that thought that came to you, hey, I should check. That would be how you hear the divine.
I was on the phone and I wasn't paying too much attention. I just had some gut to ask.
Yes.
The same ask that I have. One of the things I want to do is I want to take the show national. And
Yes.
so we're trying to do that. And I have somebody to connect me with. But another thing happened, which is very weird, but interesting. I was at a deli or a bagel stop about a week ago. And I was talking to the owner about advertising on our station. And I started walking out, and this guy's following me. He says, I like your voice. And I was like, okay. I'm saying to myself, all right, thank you. And he goes, well, I'm a producer. I said, well, so am I. And he says, no, he says, I write a play every week. Okay.
Huh.
And I said, okay. He says, I want your voice. So I said, all right. He said, I don't pay any money.
Okay.
I'm still listening. And I said to him, okay. I said, well, where does your play? He said, well, it's online. It's every week. It's just audio. I said, all right. He says, and we do it for basically the love of acting. And we bring actors together, this and that. And then he started telling me that his show starts to go through all the different states around the country. And he says, oh, by the way, if I didn't tell you, at the beginning of the show, you get to plug yourself for 20, 30 seconds telling what you do. And that goes out before the show. I said, oh. So I said, well, that can't be bad. And so one thing led to another, and I had my first one. So it was a very weird, I believe there are no coincidences. I really do believe that. It's just funny how I get a signal. With me, a lot of times it's numbers. 911, 555, 222. And generally these things to me indicate that I'm on the right path. That's generally what I get. When I went, making this choice to go up to my university, I was like, it's going to be a disruption of what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it. And I said, I'm going to do it. And as long as things go in an easy path, I'm going to do it. And so the first thing I did was I went online, looked for a hotel, whatever it was. I put the thing in, got a good rate, clicked it. I got a hotel. There was 2 rooms left. I got one. And the hotel was 10 minutes from the university. I said, well, okay, that's good. And then I left that next morning, Thursday, was up there, was around, and just people were so, I don't know, they were just so nice that I was just so like blown away. Not that people aren't nice, but it was just different coming back there. My impression was me like, oh yeah, you graduate here. That's nice. It was more like, oh, you graduated from here? Yes, I did. Wow. And I still am having a hard time understanding that. I was like, where that building, there used to be a building over there, or there used to be a road where that building is now. Real? I'm like, yeah. And 5 and 10 years ago, there used to be a place, and we used to pay for our food, and we used to not get unlimited food like you guys get now. Yeah. Really? Yeah. And that building over there that you see, that building was half the size, and it didn't have a subway inside it. Really? So no, it's not always had a subway. And the organization that you guys call team, well, a heat, we don't call it heat. We called it program council. Really? Yeah. And that wall that's there's no wall there. There used to be a wall there. Really? And it was just interesting. And then talking with some of the professors and things like that. And one of the professors said, "Oh, would you like a private tour of the building?" I said, "Sure." He's like, "I'll walk you over myself." And it
Wow.
gives me a tour of the whole building, shows me all the different labs. So it was an interesting experience. But I think my challenge is knowing, am I missing a signal? I always say, being an engineer,
Yes.
we have two types of communication. We have TCP/IP, which is transmission communication protocol, internet protocol, and then we have UDP, via datagram. And the UDP can be missed. So if a packet goes through, like for example, most video is UDP. And so if you miss something, well, there's no check to see if you missed something. On TCP, if the numbers don't match it, well, we got to go back because we missed something. So I'm always wondering, because I was like, I don't have a checksum to know if I missed his message.
Right.
And
Well,
so
that's why
I
I think
think
it comes
that's the
more than
challenge.
once.
What's that?
It comes more than once. It comes more than once. And I have missed on, I'll think, yep, I had that thought and I didn't act on it. And now I can see why I should have. But often for me, it does come more than once. I think he's kind that way. Like the thought will come and I'll blow it off and it will come. I might blow it off again. And the third time I think, whoops, had that thought
Oh,
3
so you
times.
get the thought 3 times and then you kind of realize that it's the right. And is it a voice or what are you getting, Margaret?
It's a thought. It's a thought in my head. People, we have lots of voices in our head, right? And this is just one of those. I've had to learn which one it is and how to pay attention. But it is, I don't know how to say, as I'm leaving the house once, it was like, oh, you should take an extra pen. I was going to my writer's group. And I thought, why would I take an extra pen to my writer's group? Everybody has pens at a writer's group. But I grabbed an extra pen anyway. And I get there and I sat in a different place and I usually do. And the guy next to me is like, does anyone have a pen? Because I forgot my, and I was like, well, by the way, God just sent you a pen. Here it is. And
you remember the story that God did a while ago? This was in one of the passages, and the person, let's just say they're in quicksand or they're in a pit or whatever it was, a well, and so first person comes by to help them, and let's just say he comes by with a rope, and he goes, no, some God's going to save me. I'm good. Second person comes by, they come by with a ladder. No, I'm good. I'm waiting. God's going to come and save me. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm good. Another person comes by. They come by with a crane to lift them out. And no, I'm good. God's going to save me. And so fourth person comes by. God says, well, you don't want help? Yeah, I've been waiting for you to help me. Well, I helped you. A rope, a crane, a ladder. Oh, that was you? Yeah, I sent you that help.
Right.
So I think we don't realize the package that our advice or that our help is coming in.
Yeah, good point.
And so that was a very, very powerful scripture that, you'd say, gee, people help you. And I always say this a lot, especially when I talk about the dating stuff. I say, look, I understand that you have a mindset about not meeting somebody at a train station. No, I'm not meeting my life partner at a train station. I'm not meeting them at an airport. Okay. What if you mean? I'm just not open. The door's closed. Well, suppose they're there. Yeah, but I'm closed for business. They'll have to come back.
Right.
And I'm just like, they might come back, but you can't do that. Well, yeah, I can. I don't want to meet them at an airport. I just don't want to. Really? Yeah, really.
Here's my limits. God, answer my prayer, and here's my limits. Yeah,
here's my limits. By the way, it's got to be delivered by 5:58. I mean, sometimes we do have limits, right? Limits are like, God, I need it by, or I don't like to say I need, can I have it by this date? You know why I want it by this date. There's some other things that are coming through. I need to pay this stuff. And so if you could deliver to me on or before that date, I'd be so grateful with you. And people sometimes, say to myself, like, oh, the day's come and they haven't gotten it. I said, well, the day's not over yet. And I belief, there was a great book by Claude Bristol Myers, you might know it, The Magic of Believing. And last story I'll share with you is the guy was he was actually on this cruise ship, and he said, I'd like to sit at the captain's table. Now, he was just a beginning aspiring author, and so he goes to the let's say the dining room, and they're very full, and he says, I'd like to a table for one. And she's like, okay. She says, we have a seat for you. All the way up to the front and the table. He's like, he's sitting at the very first table. He didn't think anything of it. All of a sudden, the captain comes in. And he introduces himself. I'm Claude Bristol Myers, such and such. And he says, I know who you are. He says, I'm the one that invited you to sit at my table. Yeah, I'm the one that told the hostess to have you be brought to my table. And so it was like very surreal for him at the moment. He made the thought when he got on the boat that he's going to sit at the captain's table. And 2 nights later, he sat at the captain's table.
Captain's table. Yeah.
So I think things like that are quite amazing. And I also find that whatever reason God does this, but he doesn't give us the magic when we're younger. I don't mean that in a bad sense, but I don't find we get all these perks and benefits. We don't get the A+ plan. We get like the C+ plan. Not that we're loved any less, but we don't get that extra access. Maybe because we're more mature. We just don't get that. And I feel as we evolve, it's like, okay, now I've got something for you. And it's like back then, everyone has that like nay mindset, like, oh, it never works. It never worked. I said, well, if you have that attitude of day, of course it's never going to work.
Right.
But as we do get more mature, I think the relationship with God, I mean, now that we're just ending Lent here very soon, it does help. But I can't stress how important I'd say you just don't want to go like you're going to order your fast food and say, gee, let me see what quick prayer I can dial up and see what it can bring me in 5 minutes. You've got to make it a consistent diet. If you eat healthy for one day, is that going to help you? Not really. So it's got to be a spiritual diet is what I like to say.
Yes.
And I think people are like, well, I don't have time to do it every day. Okay, well, then just do a quick prayer. Do like one prayer in the morning or, before you eat your meal or whatever. Just say thank you. It doesn't have to be a full-blown prayer to Michael, Gabriel, or Raphael, or Paduas, or whoever, or Expedite. It just needs to be a prayer of thanks and gratitude.
Yes.
And
very powerful. That idea of gratitude. Yes.
Gratitude is a very, very, very big key. Well, Margaret, I could talk to you all evening. This has been an amazing interview with you, learning about your book and what got you inspired to write that book. And, hopefully getting many of our listeners and viewers here tonight and throughout the time that people listen to the podcast, maybe while they're driving or whatever, and they happen to hear this. I want to say to you that everyone's going to hear this at the right time for them. So if you're hearing this message from us today, there's a good chance that God wants you to hear this message and that this is not just something you clicked on because it was the next thing in your lineup. This was not a coincidence. And Margaret, before I do say goodbye with you this evening, I would like to ask if there's anything you'd like to share with our audience of any way that they can reach out or they can learn more about you or how they can get your book.
Okay, so the website is inhisfootsteps.com. And I actually have 2 books out and I'm working on a third, which I actually just finished this week. And there's links to both the books, and multiple sites, of course, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and audiobooks. So they're both available as audiobooks. So if you're the kind of person who likes to listen, like the podcast, they're available as audiobooks. And then there's a little pop-up that'll come up, won't cover the whole screen, that you could sign up for the newsletter. I send the newsletter once a month. I include inspirational stories, things that have happened that are similar to stories in the books. And I only send it once a month. I'm not going to spam you. I'm old. I'm tired. Once a month. That's what you're getting.
I had one the other day. They were sending it every day. I said, I think you guys are sending out email too much every day. I was like, that's enough.
Yeah.
So what are the other two books? We have the one. What are the other two books that you wrote?
The second one is when we decided to try to give all our time to God. So we actually served as a couple. We served for a couple of missions. We, served in prisons. We were up north near the Arctic Circle, working with the
Hmm.
villagers. We
Hmm.
just traveled a lot, and then the third one is about my marriage, my second marriage, which was a match made in heaven and did not look like it. So I like to say, the first promise I got from God got me in the marriage, and the second one, which was that all of us would be healed as a result of this marriage, is the one that kept me there. And then it's about what we went through to create a marriage that was healing to ourselves and our children.
That reminds me of a very, very good story. I'm trying to remember the people that did it, and it was about a marriage. It was on a church put this on. I'm trying to remember the name of them. They're actually now owned by like Sony Pictures,
Huh.
and they had put several on in their parish. Now they've become very, very commercial. I don't think they've produced anything in a while because I think like Sony's kind of taken them over.
Great.
But this person who was head of the music program later became the video producer and everything. And then I think now he has a job with Sony. But there was a story that they put out. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Something with fire or flash or something. So they
Oh, I
had
know what you
one
mean.
movie.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yep, I
One
remember
was
that.
called Facing
Fireproof
the
or something like that.
Giants, and I'm trying to remember the other
Yeah.
movie, Margaret.
Was it Fireproof or something like that?
That's
What
it.
was it?
That's exactly it. Fireproof.
Yep.
So
Yep.
Fireproof, ladies and gentlemen, was a really, really great story, and you can watch it online. There's things on YouTube, and you could download it lots of places. They were talking about a marriage that had gone south. Okay, and without giving the whole detail of the story, the marriage was going south, and it was because of the husband. And
Yep.
so, he didn't know what to do. He was just ready to end it. And it seemed like he was ready to end it. He was trying, and Kale, it's just not working. And it was just really terrible. And so then he, had talked to his father, and he had shared this book um, about a similar problem that he had told her that happened with him and his wife, that his wife had did this to him. And he had said, to be steadfast with God, to pray, to be humble, to be honest, and to still keep loving even if you're not being loved. So
Yes.
still keep putting the energy out there. And he kept doing this, and he kept doing this. A lot of times he was doing things like one morning he made breakfast for his wife, and she's like, "Why are you even doing this anymore? Why are you even bothering?" And he's getting so annoyed. He's like, "God, why are you making me do this? Like, she doesn't appreciate it. Like enough's enough." And then he goes back to his father. He's like, "I know, just it's only been a week or two. Like, just keep working at it." And he kept working at it. And I remember it was him going to the hospital where she worked, and she was kind of dating this doctor. And so they needed some stuff for her parents. And so there was a doctor there, and she assumed that he put the money out for this new wheelchair that he needed, and this new bed for home. He assumed it was the doctor. Well, the doctor had put some money out for, I think, maybe a crutches or something small. And so she goes to the person and says, "Who gave me the bed? Was it doctors?" No, it was your husband, Kale. And she's like, "My husband?" And then she started to adjust and realized that maybe she missed something, and things started to change. And at the whole end, he said, "Caleb, it wasn't my wife that did this to me. It was I that did this to her." And this whole thing kind of changed because he worked at the firehouse and stuff, but just a very, very good movie. Very good
Yes.
movie. So I definitely want to thank you for your time. It was great to learn about how you connect and how you get the inspiration, I should say, through God and through the universe to figure out your path, and to know how to set your priorities. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you are on the fence about your messages, definitely check out Margaret's book and some of her other great books. I do want to thank you guys for popping in tonight. Really do appreciate it. Of course, really appreciate it if you would definitely comment below, like, love, support, tag your friends, colleagues, and associates. Share this out with everyone you know on social media. Go to my YouTube channel, John Space E Space MORLEY Space Serial Entrepreneur. Yes, thanks so much for visiting that. Click on that PayPal link and make the choice to buy my team and I a cup of coffee, a bowl of fruit, or a savory plate of dessert. Either way, we'll be grateful with those pennies and dollars because we'll invest them into new hardware, new technology, new equipment, new software, even new facilities to give you the most jaw-dropping, motivational content to make you change your life to something that you've always aspired that you wanted to be. I thank you so much for popping in with us tonight, and I want to thank Margaret for being with us. It was really an inspirational show, and I know I got a lot out of it, and I hope our viewers and our listeners definitely get a lot out of this show. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, John.